I'll talk about what I did. I'll talk a little bit about USET, which is a great program that just started here at the University of Utah. The program that was born from that I'm working on is a peer-to-peer support, how that ties to transformative education, and then hopefully we'll conclude with that. So, I started in CS, and back when I was in CS, I had a project I was working on with a couple other students. And I was coming into the lab that morning and I was wearing a red polo, and we were working on this project, and I told him I'm going to have to leave and come back a bunch of times. I've got all these other things I'm working on today. And the reason I was wearing that polo is because earlier I just judged a elementary science fair. And that was really exciting to do for me. I hadn't done it before. I walked in here, there's all these really neat student projects they're working on. These kids are in 5th grade, 4th grade. And I just saw that spark in them, that they really loved to go into research, or they wanted to see what this thing science was. And then I left when I was working on my project. I come back in a little bit later, about a half hour later, wearing a different shirt. And that was because I had gone to another lab and I was working with Girl Scouts. And we were, it was an outreach program that we do here where we were teaching them how to make these circuits, and we were hooking their arms up to it. And I'll go into more detail about how fun that was. But the next step after that was I left, I came back, and I was wearing just a normal t-shirt, and I could work on our project, and we got our computer science stuff done. And then later in the day, one of my friends from this group, he saw me over in the college of engineering, and I was wearing a suit that same day. And he's like, well, what are you doing now? And there was a professional dinner that we had where we were talking with people from industry, and he just said, you know, how did you get to this point? How are you doing all these projects? Why are you doing all this stuff? And I was thinking, before this talk, I was thinking, okay, what would be the path that I took? And I was trying to write it all down, and I got through all these things, and I showed it to my wife, and it looked a lot like a state machine that an engineer would draw, and she just looked at me, and I got the response that most engineers get from their spouses, which is, you're not seriously going to show this to the public, right? This is completely useless. They won't understand. I don't understand. It's completely pointless. So this is kind of how I came up with it. I started in CS. I moved into computer engineering from CS because I said, okay, I want to work with the hardware now. And I said, okay, I'll get these 2 degrees. That'll work out for me, and I'll be done. And then I said, okay, maybe I want to do some physics too. I got really excited about astrophysics and about semiconductor physics, but I wasn't too sure about physics, so I got a minor in it. And then I went, okay, now I'll do a master's in electrical engineering. That's where I am right now. I'm going, okay, I'll get this master's. And then I said, maybe my family wants me to get an MBA, but now I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll get a PhD. Maybe I'll go into teaching. And some of the people in my family are like, what? I thought you were an engineer. And I said, yeah, but there's so much to teaching. There's so much to it. And the USET program really kind of sparked that for me. And I said, okay, I can be an engineer and I can teach also. So these are the other things that surrounded that. I got into USET. I got working with Dr. First in outreach. And during a break, if you took a moment when we were outside, you noticed there was hundreds of students, little kids running around. That's engineering ambassadors, and I work with them too. And I was there the last couple of days. I've missed today because of this, but there is a profound thing to showing kids engineering. The Girl Scouts, the elementary kids, the Robot League, all these things we do on campus, these kids are blown away by when they find out what it is they actually can do at a university. It's an amazing thing to see. From the USET program, I got to work I'm the chair of the CE-UGSAC, the Student Advisory Committee. I work with UROP before I did USET. And so I have all these things, and my friend asked me, well, you know, why? And I get why a lot from a lot of people. I get why from almost everybody I deal with at the college engineering level. And I'm still Matt, come on. But I really want to point in on this USET research, or what you do in USET. So the why was, not this why, wrong why, this why. This why, okay? And why is a profound thing. People tend not to think that, I mean, I showed you all the what I do. The what's neat. Anybody can explain what. Why is an extremely important thing. And so for me, the why on every one of those things is they're all transformative. Every last one of them, somebody or something in those programs was transformative for me. So I really realized the path I took, completely unorganized, a crazy person would have followed that path. It's a terrible map, but everything was transformative for me. And every time I come across these things, I'm just reminded how much these experiences change what I thought I would do here at the university. So what is USET? I'm collecting acronyms and initialisms at this point in my career. I've got NSF and UROP and USET. USET is Undergrad Student Experts on Teaching. And when I heard that, I was like, ooh, I'm not an expert on almost anything, and let alone on teaching. There's another USET student in the back here with me too, and what I realized really quickly about USET was none of us were teachers. None of us had teaching background. We came from so many different disciplines that engineering and sports science and, and LEAP and all these programs that really have tangents to teaching aren't exactly teaching themselves. So what was neat about it is this is actually a way for students who are not especially teachers themselves to learn what teachers do. So the first part was a project, you do observations, and then you do service. The service came with the Student Advisory Committee, and I love the fact that I'm part of that. It's just like outreach. It's really fun to be part of it. The observations were probably the one thing I didn't really look forward to, because it's a student going into a teacher's classroom and telling them what they think. And I'm really just not an authority, so I go in there, and I'm no longer a student. I have been trained by these great people on how teachers and professors teach, how instructors go in there. And so you kind of get to see what happens behind the curtain and how teachers interact with their students. And that was an amazing thing for me. And I got to reflect on everything that these teachers do and what it takes to actually be an effective teacher. And then my project, I'm working with Jim. Jim right up here is a great colleague to work with. We're working on this peer-to-peer support program. And pretty much what it does is we were sitting in our engineering classes, and as engineers, we like to solve problems. That's kind of what they're training us to do, is to look at something and go, how am I going to fix that? And we said, well, there's a problem with the engineering program. What do we do about that? So we really thought, okay, how can we make these changes? And what are these changes? And so this research we were doing in this project, we started looking at some data. This is one thing that a lot of people are talking about nowadays is retention. And this is in my major now, the one I undergrad in, and if you see the pre-majors, this is the enrollment. I just want to look at the trends. We really don't want to look at data or anything like this. We're looking at trends. This is the amount of people enrolling in it as it goes year by year. The problem I saw in both this, in computer science, and especially in electrical engineering, is that bottom one is how many people are getting degrees. And we work really hard in outreach when we have these students come in and we show them all these neat things they can do in our program, or we go and we get these Girl Scouts who just, you see the spark in their eyes when they hook up an EMG circuit that they built, and they hook up their arm and they see their muscle on the screen moving. I mean, it really is an amazing thing, but I want them to graduate. And so this retention thing is a real big issue for us, that we have all of these people and we see this great trend of people coming into the program, but we're flat on getting people into the, getting people through the program and getting their graduate degree or their undergrad degree. So speaking of LEAP, I was talking about my colleague who's also in USET. I don't expect you to really kind of look at this information and digest it, but there's a trend in there that if you can see it, I need your help with some other data sets, but there's only 2 times that LEAP didn't increase the retention rate of students. I mean, that's a great thing. But the problem is I see it in there as the trend is 50 to 60% retention rates. So I want to build that up. I want to see as many possible kids. I have no idea what that is. That's not part of my slides. Now you know why I stopped at the Apple II, all right? And even object-oriented code. So what Jim really took this by the horns. I mean, really, I got to tell you an anecdotal story. Jim and I were up at the Posters on the Hill competition, and that's kind of how I ended up here. Thanks, Jim, for bringing me to this point. He grabbed President Young by the arm right after he finished talking, and there was the lieutenant governor there and a couple other VPs of research, and he dragged him over to our poster. And he pretty much gave him a 30-minute spiel about what we're doing, and I mean, it was like deer in the headlights with me. I'm just like, okay, I didn't know I was going to be presenting to these people, but it really set off a path. And Jim is a physics and ECE major like me. He pretty much taught himself how to write a website. We got this website up, and this is a way for students to interact with each other when they have problems. We Jim started going into the 1270 class, which is an introductory engineering course in electrical engineering, and we pretty much said, we're not going to lose a student. We're not going to let these kids get out of the program because they're frustrated because they think there's no one there that can help. And we're really working at making sure that they know of all the resources, because there's all these resources available already on campus. It's just they don't know about it. And when I found out about MUSE, it was like, you know, the sky parted and the sun shone, and I said, this is exactly what we need. This is, I wish I would have known about this. I'd probably have more bubbles around the core stuff I wanted, because I would have known about all these other things I have to do too. So through the USET program, well, I guess I could talk about this. So when I think of transformative, this is my engineering background. This is what I see. I see Fourier and Laplace transforms. And I showed this to my wife, and I was trying to explain to her how profound this is, and she goes, yeah, this is completely useless to most people. They're going to think it's neat when you tell them all about it, but I just don't have the time in 8 minutes to tell you that, you know, this is how I see transformative. But transformative really doesn't have to be defined. It can happen in simple, small interactions between students in laboratories. It can happen in a classroom. You can change the way you teach, or it can happen in social or after-school things that students are doing. Those kind of things can all be transformative. You don't really have to tie it down to one little thing. And with USET, there's a table back there. I have to point out, it is full of people that were extremely beneficial to me. Daryl taught me a lot about how teaching really happens. I've got Jill back there. She runs USET. She was really helpful for me in understanding how to do this research project. And now that I've been introduced to Mark Matheson and Stephanie Richardson, I have a new pathway for where this project is going to go, and it's no longer a research project. It's going to be, we're going to turn it into something that can be replicated outside of my engineering department. We can use it everywhere, and we're hopefully going to make more transformative experiences for students. And I know Corey's back there too, and he was extremely helpful telling Jim and I what to expect when it comes to developing software and developing a website, and it's a really interesting experience. But pretty much what we did in our transformative concept was we were looking at peer-led study groups where an upper division student, say a senior, who probably has some experiences since, I mean, they haven't left the program. In ECE, we pretty much have a, you know, if you're going to make it to your senior year or your junior year, you're pretty much going to graduate. It's just a matter of time more than it is. And Dr. First talks about that in our in electromagnetics, because everyone freaks out in that class. But the things we wanted to make sure we had was this feedback for students, this advocacy that the students would know that what they're thinking and what they're saying gets back to the teacher, and that we provided help to the TAs and to lab assistants where we would go into these labs. So this is really what we felt would be transformative for students, because it was for us as our experience in electrical engineering. So we're hoping that that will be, it's me and these Macs, man, I tell you what. Sorry. So really, I wanted to say thank you to a couple people. This table back here is wonderful. Dr. First isn't here right now because that's kind of the nature of Dr. First. She's off and running to some next thing she's got to do. But she is a force of nature when it comes to this stuff. I got to work with her in outreach, and she was just totally amused for what I needed to do. And, you know, she's a great professor to work with. I know, I talked with David. There was no way he thought he'd be ended up in Antarctica by the time he got done with his undergrad. No way I thought I'd be talking to a room full of people or been to like 3 or 4 conferences by now. And I'd also like to thank all of you. This is very gratifying to see this many people in a room just want to do something transformative, change something in teaching. So thank you.